Afternoon, folks. I'll present with my co-director, Brendan O'Keefe, and we'll share some of the slides. So first of all, just to give you an overview of the centre. It was actually founded in 2005 by Professor Mary O'Sullivan, and anybody that would know Mary or remember Mary, Mary arrived in 1 month and the research centre was virtually set up within 2 months later. She'd found a space and convinced somebody of space, and we hit the ground running. It's the first and only research centre in Ireland devoted to the study of physical education and youth sport. And we have national and international quality research, and we've had more than 60 international scholars visit us through 2005. I think what's really important to note is the name Pepays Ireland is deliberate. This is a research centre that was not set up to galvanise who was in UL, but rather to galvanise the research community across Ireland at the time. So back in 2005, the whole research culture and research discourse was very different. And Mary's vision was that rather than capitalise on working with the small group we had in UL, let's look to extend our expertise across Ireland and encourage people who were new to research or who were doing pieces of research that wasn't publishable to come together and actually to galvanise that as a community. And that's a principle by which we've tried to go, or tried to keep since 2005. And to be honest, that's been quite difficult in relation to the changing culture of research. So I do heavily acknowledge, Brendan and I heavily acknowledge Mary's philosophy and ethos we are trying to hang on to as we try and maintain the research centre. So I suggested a potted history. Brendan said it was actually a plotted history. So we agreed to disagree, and we have both. So I think it's really important. I'm a big context person. You know, you have to understand context to know where people are currently. So as we said, we set up in 2005. And then after a number of years, we actually appointed an advisory board. And that advisory board was fairly high-powered in relation to the people we had involved across Ireland. They're from national bodies, they're from the National Curriculum or Council for Curriculum and Assessment. And those people guided us in relation to how we governed ourselves and the work that we carried out. I would say in 2012 to 2015, we actually achieved what we had set out to do, which was to look at bringing people across different universities to work together on funded projects. So we had 2 very big projects within that period. One was a children's sport participation and physical activity, which involved 3 institutions, and another was Points of Light for Life, which involved 4 institutions across Ireland. So the ethos of working together, sharing our expertise and learning from each other was actually being lived out in that term. We then also at that time, we were actually looking at briefing documents and responses. So we were positioning ourselves, not different from what Jen was saying in relation to, we were very proactive in responding to any government or national governing agencies in relation to what should be happening in the physical education, physical activity and or youth sport space. We weren't always popular, but we always made a response. We then had a second edition of the Children's Sport Participation and Physical Activity a number of years later, where again we all worked collectively on that. And we had made enough money in relation to an earlier conference that we could actually start to pay for a PhD candidate. And that PhD candidate gave of their time in relation to helping with the administration of the research centre. In 2020, we actually looked at consultation findings in relation to, again, we were looking at briefing documents and responding to that. And then, again, we used money in 2022 for a research master's internship. And Brendan and I co-supervised that PhD candidate. And what she's actually doing, she's looking at the research centre as an entity. So she has gone back to look at our evolution since 2005, and she is starting to map physical education, physical activity and youth sport in relation to the shared spaces and the disparity within those spaces. And we're hoping that that PhD will actually direct us in relation to where we go as our next step for the research centre. And then the OVPRI gets a very welcome mention in 2024. We successfully secured money from the call that was issued. And what we did is we worked with another research centre and pooled our resources to actually employ an RA, a research assistant, for 2 years. So we now have a 0.5 RA where we're actually looking to try and galvanise and maintain momentum on what we're actually looking to do. I think you're going to do the mission and goals.
So, building on what Anne just introduced, the mission of the centre is to use high quality, multidisciplinary and multi-entity research to shape, influence and inform policy and practice related to advancing the health and well-being of populations in the areas of physical education, sport, physical activity and health. So with that in mind, Pepays Ireland identified the following strategic goals: to develop a critical mass of researchers actively contributing to multidisciplinary and multi-entity research that impacts policy and practice related to health and well-being of populations in the areas of physical education, sport, physical activity and health. So that's our goal. So trying to give an example of some highlights over the past 20 years is difficult. We've 6 mentioned on the screen here, or 5 rather, and we'll focus on 2 in particular. But just to give a brief snapshot, we've public engagement and outreach awards. UL for sports-related subjects is ranked in the top 100 of universities globally, joined first in Ireland. UL-based Pepays Ireland Research Centre members were reported as the top outstanding group internationally in the research field of physical education and sport pedagogy, and those are obviously core members of the Pepays Research Centre. And Pepays Ireland hosted the prestigious Association of Physical Education and Higher Education, or ASEP, conference in 2011, attracting 320 delegates from over 30 countries, and I think there are plans about to be put in place for something similar in the years ahead. And most recently awarded UNESCO Chair, Professor McVeigh, as the Chair in Physical Education and Sport Pedagogy for Sustainable Development. And we'll speak more directly to 2 of these in particular. So firstly, as I mentioned, in terms of public engagement and outreach, the Pepays Ireland Centre members were awarded the EHS Public Engagement and Outreach Award for our work on quality physical education and specifically impact. So a big, I suppose, we're really proud of the fact that our researchers have informed policy on the ground, and one example of such is curriculum at second level, in particular in Irish schools. So the Irish PE curriculum landscape has gone under radical change over the last decade or so, with new specifications at junior cycle, the senior cycle framework, and most recently the Leaving Certificate examinable subject, which is undergoing a draft review at the moment. And researchers in the Pepays Ireland Research Centre chaired or formed parts of the key working groups who actually designed this policy, bringing the research dimension into what's actually happening in schools. I'll hand you over.
And in our second highlight we decided to share with you is the more recent awarding of a UNESCO Chair, Physical Education and Sport Pedagogy for Sustainable Development. This is a hugely privileged position. We realised we didn't realise, we applied for it on the basis that we would run and host a UNESCO Chair through the Research Centre without any funding. Once we got it, we then realised that other people who have applied for a UNESCO Chair have actually bought themselves out from their job at the university for the 4 years. So we've missed a trick. We didn't do that. So we now have the UNESCO Chair and the roles and responsibilities of that over and above everything else that we do. But what we're looking to do is perhaps use this to direct our activity within the Research Centre towards what we have said we would do as part of the UNESCO Chair. And if you read the actual 3 objectives, you can see we've stayed very much with the ethos and the philosophy back from 2005. It's not about us, it's not about metrics per se, it's about looking at trying to make the world a better place, particularly looking through a sustainable lens. And we're not just looking at sustainability with respect to the hard SDGs. We're looking at sustainability in relation to the sustainability of research communities, the sustainability of ourselves within these research communities, and the sustainability of networks that we can actually bring together with a view of having those outputs and impact. So we're perhaps positioning ourselves slightly different than perhaps a more traditional research centre. I would say that in relation to the application for the UNESCO Chair, having the historical legacy of a research centre was a huge attraction to UNESCO. They could also already see there was some momentum there in relation to the physical education and sport pedagogy space. The sustainability is relatively new to us, but we've been convinced by UNESCO that it's something new, and they actually are looking at us in relation to how do we actually do that and marry the two together. So this is a 4-year project, and we're into our 2nd year. I think you're doing the forum?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So, the annual forum then. So the Pepays Ireland Research Forum has been an annual event since 2006, with attendees acknowledging its significance for Irish physical education, physical activity and youth sport, to share research and practice. So it's a really nice space for key stakeholders in policy, so Sport Ireland, the NCCA, as Anne mentioned, researchers, and in particular we tried to make a deliberate effort of bringing practitioners, so coaches, teachers, to our forum. So you've a really nice mix. So this year, their screenshots of the last 4 forums. This year it's taking place at University College Cork, just over a month away on June 6th, on the theme of the ever-changing landscape of physical education, physical activity and youth sport, and registration is open for that event at the moment. And just to give a brief sample then, again, there's a lot more than this going on in the Research Centre, but three projects across the 3 pillars of physical education, physical activity and youth sport. In terms of physical education, Anne is leading a group on the shared responsibility across the shared island, or the SRASI project, so teaching social justice in initial teacher education in both North and South, so a shared approach in North and South. From the physical activity space, with colleagues in the Physical Activity for Health Research Centre, we're looking, and colleagues in the School of Engineering here in UL, we're looking at uniform design and how that might actually be an impediment to engaging in activity both before, during and after school, and impact on physical education specifically as well. And finally then, in terms of youth sport, an example of a project that has just came to its conclusion, but they will be entering a new phase hopefully in September of next year, is the Erasmus Plus funded Before project. So with colleagues in the Anti-Bullying Research Centre in DCU and 6 other universities throughout Europe, we've been developing an online package for coaches around anti-bullying education and inclusive practices in sport specifically, and that's gone live now, been viewed by over 300 coaches across Europe, so that's great, and that is, opportunities.
You can see where Pepays are up and down like yo-yos. Okay, so final slide. So some opportunities and some invitations to yourselves. We have 2 work packages within the UNESCO Chair application. One is on the extension of social justice research programme. So there's an open invitation to anybody who's interested in that space. And that takes up the first project, the SRASI project, looking at how do we actually inhabit and encourage social justice in our daily lives. And the second one is actually looking at the promotion of sustainable development within teacher education programmes. So again, that's an invitation to anybody involved in teacher education to work with us and actually looking at delivering those 2 work packages. We also have opportunities in relation to we're keen to look at the Marie Curie doctoral networks and IRC. We have a number of PhD candidates who have come to us through those avenues. And we're also looking at trying to increase our international standing and connections through the Coalesce Award. So I think we'll stop there. We have a website and Twitter, and really we are open and looking for people within UL to try and galvanise the social justice and the sustainability spaces in any of the physical education, physical activity or youth sport arenas. So thank you.